Hi, my name's Anish Quenim, and the thoughts you're about to listen to are my thoughts and do not reflect those of the world at large yet. When Maria broke down at a community policing event and suggested that she was this close to taking her life, we realized we had to also work with the connectors that were leading to that thought. Not only did we provide Maria a place at our police station to study, but the officers tutored her, lifted her spirit, and also ensured that the domestic disturbances in her home were addressed by referring her parents for gainful employment and therapy versus adding to the already raised decibels and agony. Maria was the first to wish me luck for this talk that I present today. Official data and statistics suggest that 800,000 people die to suicide every year. Break that up, and that's a death every 40 seconds of every day. To that one person who has died by suicide, another 20 have fortunately had a failed attempt. To those 20 who had a failed attempt, there's hundreds and thousands at the edge this very second considering taking their own life. I believe we are nearing 3 times those vital seconds into this talk, and we can sadly say a prayer to a few souls somewhere in the world who we have just lost to suicide. If that hasn't raised an alarm, let me regretfully inform you that these statistics I mentioned are pre the pandemic. Let me also add that by now most of you have noticed my tattoos and have considered possibly compartmentalizing or labeling my personality. Hold on to that thought, its relativity will soon follow. Did you also know that 10.5 million people in the world are in contact with our criminal justice systems, which means over 1 crore people are either locked away, pending a trial, or have been convicted and placed under confinement in a jail or a prison? Did you also know that of the number of people who are eventually released from such lockups, over 81% of them are likely to return to that very confinement at some stage again? A term we call recidivism, or in easiest of terms, a community's failure to give someone a chance to undo the wrong and rehabilitate through opportunity. Let's move to the courts and the legal systems. Did you know that India alone has close to 37 million cases being handled by legal professionals this very second? Why is there so much of dispute, discontent, and disharmony? Where is this human crisis coming from? I could go on and on about such numbers and data, but that'll only be delaying my message. Let me conclude these facts by mentioning that the ratio of professional help available for humans in crisis versus our population is truly at an imbalance. The very word crisis conceals the word cry, a cry for help when something goes terribly wrong. This cry is a symptom of pain and problems in the communities we live in, a symptom which most of us tend to miss or ignore before it spreads and requires addressing. Where we live, where we are raised, and where we rise is the very environment where someone else is failing. One summer evening, as I sat alongside the officers at the local police station, we received a call from a mother in distress. We went over and learned that her son was harassing her. The neighbors had a similar complaint, and so did the onlookers. I sat myself down on the floor beside this boy, whom I'll call Bob, and followed the basic principle of 2 ears and 1 mouth and began to listen to his crisis. My choice of using tactical empathy helped de-escalate the situation almost immediately. At that very moment, I had a choice of handing over an intoxicated and a troublesome Bob to authorities, but I chose to use that very power to be there for him and take him past the criminal label. I saw opportunity whilst others saw sympathy. As time went by, Bob visited me often and evolved into a fine young man. In fact, he even called me recently to tell me about a job opportunity he received and thanked me with a hug for helping keep his record clean and also uniting his family. I don't take credit for Bob's restorative path, but instead I wonder why it ever reached me when a family, a neighbor, and onlookers could see its escalation. Where was Bob's community when he needed them the most? None of us can choose our place of birth. In fact, nor could I. And destiny so had it that I too was not to be welcomed into my own family business after completing my eligibility. I was left stranded and rejected, wondering why one of my own had left me to the unknown. It was on that very day that I decided to commit my life to community and ensure every home has a family. From coming this close to walking the plank, a voice repeated that we all have a purpose. I set out to be thankful for my gift of life by expressing my gratitude through my deeds. Life is such that we are allowed to take our emotions hostage sometimes. Healing and dealing are nature's own medicine to such crisis situations. We are all human after all. However, negotiating past this crisis is a skill we must learn or seek to learn. There is a hostage negotiator inside each of us that's negotiating a journey called life every day. Cherish each negotiation. You're either learning or unlearning. Either ways, you're learning. A myth exists, it doesn't cost you anything to love and be kind. If that's true, then why is it easier for us to say what we want, when we want, and abuse the freedom of speech by not understanding the impact of its reach? Kindness and love require effort, but that effort is preceded by the willingness to want to rather than have to. And as this talk progresses, I'll attempt to elaborate that effort, or rather, the commitment. A quote I commonly hear, it's not about what you say but how you say, true to an extent. However, most of the time, it's also about listening and understanding the other's perspective by stepping out of your own shoes rather than saying anything at all, unless it's active and participative listening. The very word you, if I may abbreviate, into Y for yourself, O for ourselves, and U for the unknown explains our individual presence in community. Understanding this abbreviation is a fundamental to community service. Taking care of you confirms your own ability to secure yourself and thus makes you approachable to others. Taking care of ourselves confirms your ability to manage your immediate and known community, such as your family, friends, neighbors, and thus makes you approachable to the unknown. Taking care of the unknown, that is the community you don't know but can get to know or unknowingly come in contact with every day, such as the ones who pass you by or you hear of, confirms your holistic approach to humanity. Sadly, none of us abbreviate the word you and go by the good old-fashioned YOU, or if I were to say it, me. To understand humanity, we must first begin by humanizing ourselves and the badges we wear on our heart and our sleeves. We play different roles every day. One morning, an officer informed me of a repeat offender, whom I'll name Jack. Jack had been often challenging the law prior to my arrival in that community, and no one was able to understand why. When I asked Jack if I could be there for him, he was amazed. Apparently, everyone was suggesting rather than allowing him to tell his side of the story. Jack told me that he dearly missed his grandmother, who had sadly passed away a few years ago. And ever since then, every opportunity, relationship, decision, and step he took was with the fear that he may lose something as precious again. And Jack's possessive responses were coming across negatively. Again, I saw empathy and opportunity over sympathy. I wore the badge of his family, of a friend, and possibly even of his grandmother to help him. Today, Jack is one of our proudest community members and assists others in distress. I'd humanize my badge and in turn, humanize Jack's too. We sleep in the confinement of our four walls, knowing we've gotten through our day, but there are many outside our home that aren't as fortunate. Listeners, let me remind you that nobody is born a criminal. Every crisis has its own story. We sometimes meet people on the worst chapters of their lives and label those very chapters as their journey. When I was conferred with the badge of a hostage and crisis negotiator, I quite naturally was very excited to play my role in responding to people's crises. But time made me realize how cursed I was to only be there for someone on the worst day of their life rather than an attempt to ensure that that day could have possibly been avoided. In community conversations, I was often asked about some of my most interesting interventions. I had a few, but I wasn't proud of that fact. Of course, maintaining my community's privacy was also imperative unless productive. Indeed, I was a crisis responder, but why couldn't I be a crisis eraser? The word why to me was magical, and I wanted to ask the question why before rather than after. I often stared at the crime charts at the police station in dismay. Unfortunately, the department's success was measured by detection and registration rather than prevention. I also wondered if we were actually making an impact with such responsive policing, or were we alienating our approachability through such interactions. I realized that success meant arresting a person or for punishing a troublemaker or for recovering a stolen item rather than any efforts we took proactively to ensure peace. I realized that we fancied a front page story with the offender rather than a picture with him and his family on a happier day. Irrespective, that chart was answering my why, and I was committed to erasing those numbers. I used that data to go back to my community and targeted those very beginnings of those very chapters that were chalked on that chart. I was able to understand the grassroots of the community crisis and started working towards the real change. No, I didn't just want to meet people on their worst day. Why couldn't I meet them on their best day? Or if not their best, then maybe this connection would have possibly unearthed a crisis that was somewhere in queue. No effort to build relations goes a waste. And whilst I also waited to respond to a crisis, I grabbed the opportunity to know my community better. The result? A rapid drop in crime, a massive rise in proactive responses, enhanced reactive and rehabilitative cooperation during and post incidents, and partnerships established like never seen before. Did this take effort? You bet it did. And was it worthwhile? Well, you tell me. Listeners, I share this because it is important for you all to take back that if you wish to do for your community, then understand where it must be done. Of course, God bless you all for dropping a meal to a hungry child. God bless you all for helping the elderly cross the road. But why has it come to that? Why can't we actually target self-sufficiency and seldom see the day when anyone needs anyone? We make the time to post our concerns that read justice for, or we make the time to walk with a candle, or we make the time to protest our non-acceptance. But has that made a difference to the root cause? No. The number of victims and those accused are not reducing. The number of suicides are not reducing. And no, the candles are not lighting the path for your community, our community. Which makes me wonder if that time which we made, was it progressive or was it rather regressive? It is us who choose to stick labels of love and hate on our communities. And to elaborate what I just said, post a talk I gave in a school to build relations between police officers and community, a little girl approached us the next day and told us that she was bodily shamed for years. Sadly, the opportunity to help her was snatched away from us by one of her own. Why? Because our call to action seemed rather small compared to the enormous social shaming that she and her family would face and the labels that they would have to wear for life. Labels plastered on them by our own communities. The girl and her family were petrified rather than justified. We call someone good and we call someone evil, and we refuse to understand the fine lines that distinguish a non-emergency from an emergency. In fact, we even classify the end of life as a division between heaven and hell. It's uncalled for because we can attempt to bridge this gap. Of the people, by the people, and for the people suggests protection of a community's constitutional rights. Yet, why do we wait to enforce the law rather than protect it? God bless our social workers, crisis responders, and mental health professionals, etc. But don't we all have a role to play to address this crisis in our community? So girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, what do we do to play our role for our community? What do we do to make this pandemic a little less suffocating? What do we do to turn the quarantine into quality time? And what can we do to develop our own vaccine to cure inhumanity? Here's a few tips considering our millennial understanding. Let's turn the influencer mentality into the influential mentality. Let's not comment, but rather commit. Let's replace the screen time with the yourself, ourself, and unknown time. Let's replace the emojis with actual reflections of humanity. Let's replace a like button with a like action, or a dislike button with a listening option, or a share with a care, or a filter with a happily ever after. When Sarah visited our police station after seeing our post that read, "Need help, we're here for you," it wasn't the post that attracted her, but everything posted on our walls, both digital and human, before, during, and after, that made us approachable. Our stories didn't just last for 24 hours, but lasted forever and deeply embedded in the hearts and timelines of our community. And that's where we begin, our self-change. Once we program ourselves to be more positive and approachable, we progress to partnerships. The partnerships we build then progress to problem solving. The problems we solve then progress to peace. Don't just do because you must or because your social feeds will look good. Do because the data is screaming what the community actually wants you to do. It's important to understand that Santa Claus's naughty list was more important than his nice list, because that's where the damage needed to be addressed. Knock on the doors of the known, of the unknown, and your own, and double-click the moments of connection till it's a heart. Cherish this digital age and use it to make a difference. Don't fool yourself with the term social distancing. We were already socially distancing from well before the pandemic by never presencing. Spread empathy, love, and kindness. Cherish the power to also unlearn and make the world your own positive classroom. The ones who dislike you, they are your most important students. Humanity is often going to be a thankless job. But don't do it to wear your own medal. Do it because the change will enable someone else to wear a medal where once they wore helplessness and hopelessness. And thus, my listeners, as Joel Osteen rightly said, life is not too short. We just wait too long to begin. Similarly, let us now begin to actually recreate a new normal by adding kindness to that very life and wake up to realize a dream. A dream where our crisis responders are seldom needed. A dream where our jails and prisons are empty because we have addressed the criminal instigation and not the criminal reaction. A dream where the millions and billions being invested into the afterthought is rather invested in the root cause. A dream where the leaders we elect are not asked what they'll do for us, but asked what they know about us, thus their agendas are definitive and not imaginative. A dream where we stop reading the subtitles, but rather look up, listen, and acknowledge each emotion. A dream where we police our communities together and recognize the various badges of hope we all wear. A dream where our philanthropy is not merely for our own trophy, but to lift our community on a pedestal of glory. A dream where we understand that every individual comes with baggage and that baggage must be respected. A dream where our profiles aren't verified by our popularity, but rather by our ability to make the voices of our followers louder than the clicks of the paparazzi. A dream where to the maths and to the physics and to the chemistry and to the biology, we also teach our rising generations a subject called humanity. A dream where we don't just join a say no to this day or a say no to that day campaign, but rather relentlessly contribute and immerse ourselves every day to that change we wish to see. A dream where capes are not just worn by superheroes, but are draped around those who once valued themselves with a zero. A dream where our prayers, irrespective of our religion, don't just ask from God, but rather express our gratitude and deeds that assist Him to play His role. A dream where we value the potential of our own community and celebrate their ability to rise to heights of never seen before capacities and not lose them overseas. A dream where I don't just see appreciation to my content, but rather see you pay it forward to your kingdom through your own humanitarian wisdom. A dream where through solidarity, we help build and cross bridges and not erect walls and leave open ditches. And a dream where my thoughts are our thoughts and a community filled with humanity coexist to extinguish, abolish, and demolish a crisis called inhumanity. Thank you.